Hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Homegrown Musician. So on YouTube, there's about 1,000,001 videos on how to record the perfect electric guitar sound. So I'm going to do something slightly different, and I'm going to tell you the things that you definitely shouldn't be doing when recording electric guitars at home. So to properly understand what not to do when recording electric guitars, you need to at least know a little bit about how to record electric guitars. So I'm going to completely contradict everything that I've just said and show you how to do that. So the most obvious way to record electric guitars is to mic up the amplifier that you'll be playing them through. Now the next step is to place a mic on the speaker. For this, I'd recommend using a dynamic microphone as they have a higher SPL rating, which means they can take louder volumes. If you place the microphone directly on the speaker cone in the centre, this is known as being on axis and gives you quite a bright sound. The further you move to the edge of the cone, the darker the tone will get, and this is known as being off axis. Now at this point you've probably got quite a solid sound already, but I'd actually recommend using a second microphone, ideally something a bit different, like a large diaphragm condenser. Just make sure that it has a high enough SPL rating so that it can take the loud volumes. Now the reason I recommend using a second mic is that you can blend the two together afterwards to get a unique tone, or you can shoot the two out and choose which one you prefer. So the second method of recording guitar is actually even easier, and you just plug your electric guitar directly into your interface. Now at this point you can model the sound of nearly any amplifier using plugins. So some really good plugins for this are THU by Slate, Guitar Rig and Bias Effects. So this method's great, especially if you're working on a budget or you can't play at loud volumes due to things like noise complaints. Okay, so now we've got the basics of guitar recording down, let's talk about the things that you definitely shouldn't be doing. So one trap that people always seem to fall into is over-miking instruments, and guitar amps are definitely no exception to this. You really don't need 5, 6 or 7 microphones to make a guitar amp sound great. 1 or 2 well-positioned microphones, maybe with some room mics if you're in a good acoustic, will sound fantastic by themselves. If you think about it, you're much better off having 1 or 2 great sounding microphones than having 7 awful sounding microphones all put together. All you'll be doing is just adding more crap to the crap pile. So having too many microphones can actually cause more problems than not, due to this effect called phase cancellation. So I'm not a scientist, but I understand the basic concept. So sound travels in waves that oscillate in one direction and then another direction. So for this, we'll say upwards and downwards. Now microphones pick these waves up and allow us to play them back, which is great. If you have one microphone on a sound source, you'll just have one wave. Now if you have 2 or more waves playing at the same time, this is where problems start to occur. Now if the waves are both travelling the same direction at the same time, this is known as being in phase. However, if they're going in opposite directions at the same time, this is known as being out of phase, and it can actually cause weird frequency issues, making your sound quite nasally and very unappealing. So if you are going to use 2 or more microphones, you need to make sure that they're the same distance away from the sound source, as theoretically, this means the wave should always be in phase. If you're going to be using more distant microphones as well, use the 3-to-1 rule. Now this is where the furthest microphone is 3 times the distance away from the sound source as the nearest microphone, as this will also help to reduce phase. So on to the next point, do not forget to tune. So tuning might seem like an obvious point, but it's one of those things that people always forget about because they're too busy, I don't know, miking up the guitar amp from down the road, and it will definitely come back to bite you in the eye. For what it's worth, make sure that you have a clip-on tuner, or even better, a more accurate tuning pedal at your disposal whenever you need it. Most of the plugins that I talked about earlier will have tuning apps built into them, so really there's no excuse not to be tuning your guitar. This is especially important if you're playing detuned stuff like in drop D or drop C, or you're really attacking your guitar, as this will drag your tuning out. So this might sound like a stupidly obvious thing to say, but there is nothing worse than having taken all the mics down, packed up for the day, and then coming in to edit or to mix your recording, and to find out that this perfect take actually isn't so perfect because you were slightly out of tune and you're going to have to redo it all again. So my next point, do not record guitars with bad or poor quality equipment. You'll regret it in the long run. So before the comment section turns into a mad mob baying for my blood, I am not saying you need to spend thousands of pounds on custom shop this or hand-wired amp that, because you really don't. We're actually living in the golden age of home recording, where it's cheaper than ever to do, and you can get studio quality recordings on what is effectively a shoestring in the world of music, which just makes it more annoying that people are intent on using really crap gear. So if your setup looks anything like this and you're expecting quality recordings, think again, because it just isn't going to happen. The two just do not correlate. So obviously, I know music's a really expensive hobby, it is, but like I said, there are some really good alternatives and even budget equipment that still can help you make great recordings. So if you're looking for a guitar, I couldn't recommend Yamaha's Pacifica range anymore. They're actually dirt cheap, new, and sound great. Squier also make great guitars, Epiphone make great guitars. There's really no excuse to be needing to spend thousands of pounds to get a good quality guitar these days. So if you're really stretched on budget, you can actually go on eBay and find some steals. In fact, let me just go and get something. So I actually picked up this Squier Strat for 30 right here for 30 quid on eBay, 30 quid. So like I said, if you're really stretched, there's always the second-hand market and you can definitely find some gems. So thanks to computers these days, you don't even need an amplifier to record guitars anymore. So what's the point in buying, say, a beginner or mid-range level amplifier for 200 quid when you could just buy a plug-in for 100 quid that models 10 times the amount of amps and sounds that has? So I do understand that some people will be working on seriously tight budgets and can't afford to buy any new equipment at all, and that is perfectly understandable. If you can, see if you can borrow something from a family member or a friend, especially if it's a bit better than yours, at least for the duration of your recording. At the very least, make sure whichever guitar you do use when you're recording is properly set up so there are no dead notes or intonation issues and has a fresh set of strings, as this will massively help. Trust me, there is nothing worse than spending time, energy and money on recording songs that you've written for them to still come out not sounding as good as you'd like them to. I know it might be a bit hassle, I know it might be a bit of an extra investment, but try and get the best quality gear that you can when you're recording, because it will be worth it in the long run and you'll be happier with the overall product that you come out with. So that actually brings us to the end of today's video. I know it's not a typical guitar recording video, but I didn't really want to do just another "this is how you record guitars" because there are so many of those. I thought I'd put my own little twist on it to keep things a bit interesting. Hopefully you'll avoid the things that I've been speaking about in today's video. If you can think of anything else that you should probably avoid when recording guitars, leave it down in the comments below. Please remember to like, share and subscribe, as it'd massively help the channel.